gonna get started. Mrs. Ford,
Yes, ma'am.
we're ready for roll call.
Okay. Chairwoman Robinson.
Here.
Mrs. Black.
Hang on. That's what I'm talking about. Here.
Mr. Connor.
Here.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Mrs. Jones.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Perez.
Here.
Mrs. Faye Robinson.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Thurman.
Here.
Dr. Wingate.
Here.
Superintendent Dr. Robertson.
Here.
And Mrs. Davis.
Good deal. All right, next we'll have the election of our vice chair. Do I have a motion, or do I have a nomination?
I would like to nominate Caritza Mosley Jones.
I would,
Is there a second for Kritza?
Second.
Okay. All right, are there more nominations on the floor?
I would like to nominate Joe Smith, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
So with this vote, we will go down the line and say Jones or Smith. Okay.
Okay, hang on just 1 second.
Smith and Jones.
Smith and Jones.
Mrs. Black.
Mrs. Jones?
Mr. Connor.
Mrs. Jones?
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Smith.
Mrs. Jones.
Mrs. Jones?
Mr. King.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Perez.
Mrs. Jones.
Mrs. Faye Robinson.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith.
Smith.
Mrs. Thurman.
Smith.
Dr. Wingate.
Mr. Smith.
Chairwoman Robinson.
Smith.
Okay.
All right. Congratulations, Mr. Smith. Faye, you will change seats with Mr. Smith.
Now.
I don't know.
Yes.
Now? Yes, go ahead, yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's permanent.
Now,
Now.
Mrs. Robinson.
He's gonna come out and swap the
Great.
things.
Okay.
We need to do that the next time. We need to do that now.
Yeah,
Now.
just do it now. I mean, we'll be here,
said
yeah, it
now.
won't be here very long. Okay,
We will. I have the reader desk on my And the water, and that's it.
it's been a pleasure sitting next to you. It's been a pleasure. Okay, we'll move into the approval of the agenda. I do want to note that we will need to amend Board Matter B, as we discussed in our work session. Okay, I'm sorry, we'll wait a moment.
Oh, great. How you doing? Brought your suitcase.
Between two blazed.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please. I'm sorry, call for the vote.
That was Ms. Jones and Ms. Thurman, correct?
Yes.
Mrs. Black.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Perez.
Yes.
Mrs. Faye Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Dr. Wingate.
Yes.
Chairwoman Robinson.
Yes. Next, we'll have our pledge to the flag and the meditation by Mrs. Fanny Moore, principal of CSAS Lower School.
Good evening, Dr. Robertson, Dr. Stewart, Chairman Robinson, members of the board. My name is Fanny Moore, and I'm the principal of CSAS Lower School, and it is my pleasure to be here tonight to lead the meditation. Before we venture into that meditation, I want to take a moment to introduce you to the true stars of the evening. I'm so honored that members of our CSAS Girl Scouts troop are here to lead the pledge for us. They are also joined by their dedicated troop leader, Miss Chris Heffington, who is also a kindergarten teacher at CSAS, and Whitney Sewell. One of the honors we have at CSAS is to watch our students start off in kindergarten and graduate as seniors. So we have a multi-level troop, and I'm joined by Kaylee Moore, who is a senior Girl Scout. She has achieved Bronze Award and Silver Award, and she is a freshman at CSAS. Peyton Heffington is a junior Girl Scout, and Peyton is a fourth grader at CSAS, and Amelia Sewell, who is a Brownie Girl Scout. Amelia is a third grader. We did have a few others, but we lost them to sports because of the time, but they are here in spirit. So now I'm going to turn it over to the girls.
Please stand for the pledge. Salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, girls. I'm now going to allow Kaylee to take a minute to tell you why she likes being a student at CSAS.
Being a CSAS student is an honor. When you attend, you feel so much more prepared to handle life after graduating or schooling beyond that. I feel proud to say that I attend my school in a deep gratitude for the education I have received thus far and plan to continue receiving.
I think it's important that we hear from our students. Aristotle once said, "The roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet." In my opinion, the best part of being a principal is having the opportunity to be in classrooms. However, as a principal, the hardest thing to accomplish on some days is being in the classrooms. I was recently given the awesome opportunity to teach a second grade class for an entire afternoon, a positive outcome of sub-shortage. The students were diving deep into the EL module and were learning about the importance of school and how hard it is for some students around the world to access an education. The opportunity to watch our students empathize with students who live half a world away was something that truly stuck with me. As a Paideia school, we pride ourselves on giving our students the skill set they need to discuss real-world topics. The discussions that took place amongst these young scholars was simply amazing. They recognized that not everyone has the freedom to access an education. We discussed how it is aggravating to wait in the rain for a bus that is running late, or how irritating it is to be stuck in the car with your annoying little brother, but how lucky we are to have cars and buses that get us to schools, because there are students out there that are walking miles down a mountain and literally taking a bucket that is attached to a zip line to cross a raging river below. It is no secret that the past few years have been difficult for educators. But facilitating this discussion with this passionate group of second graders reminded me of my true north. I decided to be an educator for 2 reasons. The first was because my parents truly valued and promoted education. My father was raised in a small village in Greece and only made it through the 3rd grade. My mother was raised in Athens and was able to graduate high school, but they both wanted their children to do more. They wanted us to get a college degree because this was something that nobody could take from us. The second reason I wanted to become an educator was because I was a struggling student. I like to say that I was the original E&L student, even though I know it wasn't true. It was my teachers, coaches, and principals that pushed me and convinced me that I could do whatever I dreamed of doing. They never told me it was going to be easy, but they told me that my hard work would pay off. Their dedication and belief in me empowered me so much that I knew I had to pay it forward. As I leave you tonight, I want us to remember that we are charged with the most difficult yet most rewarding job. This group and the decisions that you make impact our children's future. The decisions are hard and often bitter, but by working together and by understanding that education is the greatest gift we have to offer, I truly believe that we can be the change agents that our society so desperately needs, and that our future will truly be sweet. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to be here with you tonight.
Thank you, Principal Moore, and thank you to our Girl Scouts. You guys did a great job.
Come back in February, bring cookies.
Oh yeah, come back in February and bring us cookies. That's what Mrs. Black said. I like that idea.
I like that.
I know. So tonight we do not have any exemplars of excellence. So we'll move into our board member disclaimer statement. Mrs. Ford.
You just start at the end. And
We'll start with Mr. Groen. Okay.
I have no
Okay,
parent or spouse
that's fine.
Okay.
No problem.
that works for the school.
Okay. I declare that I have a relative
who works for the school system, and my votes on the board's vote on budget or policies may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative or a member who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budgets, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system. I also will be recusing myself from the vote, item 9A1.
I declare that I have relatives, plural, who work for the school system, and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relatives, plural, employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a family member who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Perez. Okay. Are there any items that need to be pulled? Okay. Call for the vote.
Okay. Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes, but Ms. Ford, please note that I abstain from 8D3A.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Faye Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman Robinson?
Yes. Okay, we'll move into board matters. Do I have a motion to approve item A, lease agreements between Hamilton County Board of Education and City of Chattanooga for operation of Head Start programs?
So moved.
All right, I've got that's the exact time. Motion from
Vice Chair wins everything.
Mr. Smith and a second from Mr. Connor.
Okay. Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
I'm recusing.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Faye Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman Robinson?
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the Cigna building purchase as the current amended contract in front of you?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Black, second by Mr. Groen.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Faye Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairwoman Robinson?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the PECA Special Question Committee?
Move to approve. Oh.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mrs. Jones and a second from Mr. Keene.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
No.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Faye Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairwoman Robinson?
Yes. Okay, we have an information section of legal services and the CFO report, events and announcements. Report cards come out tomorrow. I know I'm excited.
Can I make an announcement?
Yes, give me 1 second. Yep. October 24th through November 18th, we have parent-teacher conferences scheduled throughout the district. Monday, October 31st is Halloween, very important. More importantly, though, November 4th and 5th, we have our board retreat at Abba's house. I will be emailing out an agenda for that with topics and discussion items. Possibly after tomorrow. Dr. Robertson doesn't know it yet, but we're going to talk about it. But we will have that to you soon. Wednesday, November 9th is a half day for students. November 10th through 13th is the TSBA convention and leadership training for the board. And Thursday, November 17th is our next meeting. And I do want to make a reminder that we now have committees in place. And if there are items that make sense to meet about over the next month before our next board meeting, I'd love to see the committees meet, and at our next agenda, we will give updates from those committees. And you may or may not have an update, but if there is something to update, then we'll have a spot on our agenda for it. Mr. Perez.
So two things. One, I actually very much, I agree with the delegates that express a concern about those who aren't able to join us before 5 o'clock. So I would like the board to consider that the delegate come back to the board agenda meeting just to consider. I leave that to the chairwoman and those who set the agenda. And then secondly, reminder is kind of to all staff to please fill out by tomorrow your benefits. So anyways, I know that's important, so get that in, please. Bye.
Are there any more announcements or any other comments? Look at that. Got you out of here at 7 o'clock. Dismissed.